Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. Wait, sorry, let me do that again. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. MC Trey, and we've got a special guest with us today. Hau, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm super good. Thank you for having me, Trey. We have a long history together, and for us to reconnect in this capacity um, is quite special. I think when we first met and what we thought we were going to do, we never thought we'd be in these positions and reconnecting on a different platform. So, thanks again, and I appreciate you. I appreciate your work, man. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate what you do as well. And yeah, time does fly, right? If we look back at when, we worked together, no, is it 2 years, 10 years, 20? I don't know. Time flies.
And then you have kids, and then you're just like, wow. Then that soup, then adds on another 10 years when you have kids, and you're just like, oh wow, okay. You're looking at old
Honestly,
photos, you're like, oh no.
yeah,
No, but
everything for a
it is
period.
it's but I do think about a lot of the peers that we grew up with, and we lost contact over the years, and I think we're very fortunate that we've been able to stay in touch with each other and with what we do, what we love, and a lot of that revolves around community and music, and
So true.
we're
Yes,
very
indeed.
fortunate to be able to, and using that to connect with younger generations and still be in touch with those that came before us.
So true. Being the cool uncle or the cool auntie, still
Yeah,
connected.
that's it.
But yeah, tell us about yourself for those who haven't met you before. Tell us about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, my name is Langomia Hau Latukefu, or affectionately known just as Hau. 45 years old. Was born in Canberra, grew up in Queanbeyan. Queanbeyan's like just outside of Canberra, regional New South Wales, and lived there for till I was about 28, and then moved to Sydney. But throughout my childhood, rugby, of course, was a very big thing for me. Family was very big for me. I was very fortunate that my father and my mom's had a lot of brothers and sisters in Canberra, so I grew up with my cousins a lot. And and during the 80s, 70s, and 80s, the community was very small. So I was very fortunate. I was very close to my relatives, and it was very loving upbringing. And of course, grew to love the music and culture of hip hop. And um, from high school, I started writing, and it's like, oh, yeah, that's if I'm not gonna make Wallabies or Tonga, I'm gonna be a rapper. And I think that decision, you have to be very, not only very dedicated, but very kind of selfish. I think we're taught that being selfish is very wrong, and in a lot of cases it is. But I do feel like there needs to be a bit of that selfishness to be like tunnel vision. Like this is all. I got no plan B. I just want to be a rapper, and that's what I'm going to be. And then you kind of dedicate that, all your energy and your time into that, and became a rapper, and fortunately got to have a good career doing that, and meeting people like yourself, and meeting people like Raul, and a lot of Sydney crew, and a lot of Melbourne crew, and that kind of evolved into going onto radio, and then going into um, mentorship, and just being able to use a lot of my experiences and knowledge to help the young ones coming up, and especially the young ones of our community, because when our parents came here, it was a big deal just to even make it to Australia. And you got a job, it was sorted. But as you do as a kid, you always just want more. And I think being a parent now, you kind of realize your job is to build that foundation, and then the children build from that for their children. And that's what I always wanted to do, not only for my own children, but for the children of the community. And yeah, it's a long story, and it's a very loving story. I'm very, you know, I say the word fortunate a lot because I do realize I am very fortunate in my upbringing, because I had both parents, both very hard workers, loving, and through that I learnt about love and about trust and honesty, and fortunate to be able to share that with my own family these days. So yeah, bringing me here today, it's very challenging and tough times, especially for our youth. But people like ourselves are here to lend an ear and even lend a hand.
So true. And yeah, what a beautiful, space to grow up in Canberra. I remember it was a very tight-knit community, and
You're
I met a lot
quiet.
of your family as well without even realize that you were all related. I remember big community there in Canberra, and created a lot of very talented artists here in Australia. What you talked about music and then going into radio and then mentorship, but most people wouldn't know that your group was the first group to win the hip hop ARIA, right? Was that the
Yeah.
case?
Well, a lot of people don't even know that I rapped, because a lot of people only find out about me through my work on Triple J as a radio presenter, which is, for me is a good thing, because I'm able to reconnect with different generations. But yeah, it's funny when people find out, like, oh wow, you're a rapper yourself. Yeah, I did my thing. We did our thing back then in the 90s, and yeah, and as you know, that there was no real industry here for us back then. It was a very underground culture, very exciting, but very small, and in a lot of ways very disrespected and unacknowledged. So, through our hard work as a community, we started to gain that recognition. And in 2004, the ARIAs introduced the first award for what was called the urban release, which, urban is hip hop, R&B, so pretty much anything that is black music was urban. So I'm thankful that they've changed it now. But yeah, 2004 was the first time they introduced that award, and we won it, and we were up against acts like 1200 Techniques and what was his name? What was the producer out of Melbourne? Jay West, and those groups were really big at that time. So we thought, nah, we're not going to win. And even toyed with the idea of not going at all, because we didn't want to pay because you still had to pay for your ticket to go. And we're like, man, we're going to pay this much money to go and then lose. But we thought, this might be the last time, that we're, invited to these kind of things. So let's just make the most of it, meet people, have fun, and, leave it at that. But yeah, fortunately we went and we won. And yeah, it was a very proud moment in our career. It was definitely a moment that wasn't part of what we thought was going to be a part of, because you grow up and you're like, we're never going to be at these award shows, so you don't grow up thinking I want to win an ARIA. Like a lot of American kids grow up thinking I'm going to win a Grammy, I'm going to get Grammys, I'm going to win one. And we never had it then. But now kids can have that dream, be like, oh, I want to grow up and get an ARIA. So yeah, 2004 we won it. Came back to Queanbeyan. I was on the front page of the local paper with my parents. It was it was an enjoyable moment. My friend was like, "Oh, you made it, man! You're in the front of Queanbeyan Age."
Yeah. Wow. Oh, that was a great win for hip hop, and especially for the independent artists back then to be recognized. So big ups to you and Daniel's son for that win. But you talked earlier a bit about growing up in Canberra and a bit about your cultural background. But I was wondering, what was it like for you? Because we talked about this earlier off camera as well. A lot of Pacific young people, right, that they're navigating those spaces that they have at home, but then out in this at school, so in their different social worlds. We did that navigation and still continue now when the young people are doing it. what was that like for you, you know, trying to work out? Because, you know, for me, it was like, am I Islander? Am I Aussie? What am I, you know, navigating? Like,
Is that
did you
cultural
have similar
conflict?
experiences? Yeah.
I don't know. I always thought it was interesting growing up where I grew up because, you know, obviously had family in Sydney. And I always felt like in Sydney, because the population was so big and it was an international city, you could afford to have certain suburbs that were predominantly from a country or part of the world. Like if you go to a certain area, a lot of islanders, or there's a lot of Asians, a lot of Middle Eastern. So I always found that really interesting because you grew up with a lot of people that are from your area of the world and who aren't related to you. Whereas growing up in Queanbeyan, because it was such a small community of Tongans, but you know there was some Samoans, some Fijians, but then there was a lot of Vietnamese, Chinese, and Italians and Greeks. So we grew up very multicultural. You know, like best friend was German. You know what I mean? Like, so I think me integrating into society felt like we were all quite equal. We were all trying to figure it out. You know, obviously we had the white Australians who was more of them, but I didn't have. You know, I was always proud of being Tongan. You know, parents always talk about it. We had customs at home. Even though we spoke English at home, it was a very Tongan household and very part of the Tongan community. But at the same time, I never was led to believe that I wasn't Australian as well. So it's very fortunate. I mean, there's a lot of times where I felt I was different, you know, to a lot of the white Australian kids. But at the same time, I never felt like that conflict of am I Tongan or Australian. I just always felt like I belonged, which I was very fortunate because I saw a lot that didn't have that confidence, especially some cousins who were of a mixed race foundation. You know, like the dad was Tongan, and the mum was white Australian. You know, that was seeing them trying to navigate through society was very tough because there were, you know, too white for the Tongan community, too Tongan for the white community. You know, there was just in that no man's land. But I was very fortunate that I didn't have that and felt that I belonged. And I do feel it's because, you know, of that kind of multicultural society that I grew up in.
I guess, yeah, Canberra being smaller, and then there are other young people from different backgrounds but similar experiences, right? You could
because you know I had a lot of cousins in Sydney and in Auckland, and then I was often talking about the Samoans and like clashing, and you know, especially back then, you know, the 80s was just like nuts, and I was like, what, why, you know? I mean, obviously I knew of the history, but because we couldn't afford to do that here. You know, it was like, oh, it's another islander, mad. You know, like we're friends. You're like, let's stick together. Whereas in Sydney, I always felt like I had that kind of animosity between, you know, each island, and not always, but just felt a lot of the times.
Interesting. Yes, good old Sydney, always bringing out the best and not so good enough.
Well, but you know, I think it goes to what you're saying is trying to fit in. You know, where do I fit in? Like, and I think by nature we just kind of always want to clash.
Yeah.
We're not. It's really interesting because we are very emotional people, right? I've always felt like as men, it's not like a lot of my white friends that grew up with like men crying. It was like, oh, you're a girl. Whereas, you know, in the island community, like men cried. You see it all the time. And it was fine. But at the same time, we just how we can have the freedom with that, but then not have the freedom to express ourselves emotionally in other ways. You know, we'd rather bottle it up and kind of clash over it instead of trying to openly talk about it.
And I guess there, traditionally there's been those cultural spaces, right, for men to talk in their spaces,
Yeah, yeah,
like with
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
cover groups or the
Mm,
other, settings that were already embedded in our culture. But then here in Western society, we have to try and create that, which we probably did through hip hop, and our own
mm.
kind of it created our own subcultures. But I'd say that would be adding to it as well, not having those
True.
men only spaces. But then I guess that's why barbershops are doing well, as well, because
Yeah,
men
true.
have that
Hey, you know
spot.
what? I never thought about it, but man, you do draw a really relevant point. Because there's what last couple of 4 years, how a lot of the Pacific Island barbershops were opening up. I was like, man, it's really interesting. Like, I knew we always cut hair because that's what you did. You cut each other's hair, but then actually making these barbershops, I was like, man, what is going on? Everyone's just, obviously they love the art form of it, but yeah, it does go deeper than that, especially like
Mm,
seeing with Charles Lomney, what
yeah,
he's done
exactly.
through that art form of cutting hair and then kind of connecting with people through that and giving people a
Yeah.
sense of worth and confidence and things like that. And yeah, wow, I never thought of it, but yeah, very true.
And he's doing, the same thing that he was doing through his music,
Mm,
being creative, sharing his bit, helping others, has just shifted it over to barbering.
yeah, that's
So it's,
awesome to see.
yeah, it's good to see him doing well with that. But in regards to like other creative projects, you were saying you're doing the radio. What else are you working on that you'd like to share?
Yeah, radio is an interesting development in my career because again, like the ARIA's, radio was never part of the plan. Whereas some people like, oh, I want to be on radio. That wasn't well. I wanted to be on radio, but the songs, not as a presenter. So the opportunity arose. Like big shout out to Maya, of course, who brought me in whenever she had to leave the tour or have a break. I would fill in and this is cool. It's fun, play the music I like for a few hours. And then when she decided to move permanently overseas, that opportunity came up. And at that time, I had to really think about it because I was an artist and I wasn't sure how being on radio as a presenter would affect, me being an artist. Um, but I talked to my mom, my wife, and said, "Man, this is an opportunity." And that's the thing that we have to get through to the youth is that you have to take these opportunities, whether they work or not work. It doesn't matter. It's the process of taking it and getting out of our comfort zone and just trying something new regardless of because I know how it is when you're a kid too. Like, we try and do something different, what it's like, and this guy just thinks he's better than all of us, and then when you fail, everyone, oh, shame, and I still carry a lot of that now. I'm 45 years old, like I'm trying something new and not doing it because I'm scared to fail and be embarrassed. I think that's that happens for a lot of humans, but especially our people. And that's what I try and tell my kids. I'm like, man, don't be like me. Like, not try these things. Try it. Fail, you learn. Um, and there were a lot of opportunities I passed up as a kid because I either didn't know about it or I just didn't want to try because I didn't want to look bad, trying in because it still want to be looked as a failure, whereas that is not the case. Like failing is not giving it a go. You know what I mean?
So
Um,
true. Yeah.
yeah, and
And yeah.
we talked off camera about things I had to unlearn, and that was one of them. My friends used to take the piss out of me because they always, because of how I was, they always just my white friends, they would say, oh, it's too cool to run for the bus. You know what I mean? Because I always thought bus is coming, but you don't want to run because looks like you're trying to get the bus, and then when the bus leaves, you just look like an idiot. And that was my mentality for so many years. And my friends always say, "Oh, you guy too cool to run for the bus." You know, I had to unlearn that, and learn how to run for the bus, and then learn how to deal with it when the bus leaves without me on it. It's a long journey, but I feel me recognizing it now and then being able to express that to younger people is beneficial, because they probably feel like that, but sometimes don't recognize what it is. And if I'm able to
So
say
true.
this, and then they're like, "Oh shit, that's how I feel," and
Yeah,
and if they recognize it earlier than I did, then the potential is limitless.
so true. Name it and normalize it. So true.
Exactly, that, and like I'm always big on representation. Like being in spaces that we're traditionally not, because and like my wife says, like if you can see it, you can be it, and that's what you want to be. You want to be in these spaces where people like, I mean, I still get people now saying that, "Oh yeah, I saw you win that award in the ARIAs. I didn't know who you were, but then I saw you on there. I was like, wow, he's like me, and we need that more often, because we
We
didn't have it,
definitely do.
did we? We were like, who were we looking at? We were looking at our family, but then there was maybe like some gangsters or um, footy players, that
Footy
we
players.
felt like were, you'd look at these. Maybe it's not like the NRL now, but the NRL back then, there was probably. I always remember Sione Fifita. He's the Tongan guy. He used to play for St. George, and he was the only Tongan guy that I saw at the time. And I remember looking at him like, man, wow, this Tongan guy, And I think now kids growing up seeing teams like Panthers and Rabbitohs, like it's so normal. Like you said, like normalize that.
Yeah, so true. And good on you for taking that on your journey to pass it on to the next.
Mm,
But speaking of passing on to the next, I know that you in the early days helped a lot with OneFour. So they're like a young group that I would say that you mentored, right, back in the day.
mm.
Um, how did that come about, and what was that process like?
Uh, they're a group that I was put onto by Ricky. Ricky manages them now, and Ricky is from um, I think he's from Bankstown area, um, Indonesian boy, and he would often, because I would often look for Pacific groups, and he's like, "Oh, have you heard? Have you seen OneFour?" And I was like, "Nah." I think Elijah Yo as well put me onto him, and so I watched a video of theirs, and I was like, "Oh." I was pleasantly surprised, because at that time, I mean, Haus was doing his thing, and of course, Pistol Pete and Enzo were, at that time, I think, were probably the biggest kind of Pacific hip hop group. But it was always very American, you know. It was weird for even us to have our natural accents back then, So because a lot of other Pacific people would rap in American for whatever reason. And when I watched them, they were rapping like in their own accent, and I was like, okay, like so. It was strange for me to see that, but it was awesome. And then B, musically, I was just like, okay, they're listening to grime, they're listening to drill, which at that time was very strange for Pacific kids, because they're usually like LA kind of hip hop. And that goes to us as people too. We don't tend to kind of go outside of what we know, and that's what appealed to me about those boys in particular. I was like, okay, these guys listening to something different, look different, sound different, talking some madness, and they're skillful. So a lot of it was really music based, but them being young Pacific men really intrigued me as well. So I was kind of just watching them from afar, seeing what they do, and they were very inconsistent with the output. But every time they did drop, it was something special about it. And then they dropped what you know. So okay, I can see it. These kids really got something. So I just reached out and said, look, if you, because people would tell me about their past, and I said, look, man, if you guys are serious about making music, let's just connect, talk about it. Maybe I can give you some pointers on how to go beyond what you're doing. And a lot of people talk about how much I gave them, which is very true, but I also tell people you must credit them for actually listening, because they could have just said, oh, what's this guy want? But they were very open. They said, oh, okay, cool, yeah, let's meet. And I said, oh, we can come in the city. And I said, no, I'll come out there. Like, tell me where to go, I'll come. And I think that gesture was the start of the trust building, because it wasn't me telling them to come to me. I was like, oh, I'll come to you. I'll come to your area. So I met them, we chat, and they told about the history with the law, what they want to do, and yeah, we just talked about that, and I said, oh, look, what are the biggest obstacles you guys are facing that are preventing you from really, besides legality, the legals, outside of that, what is really holding you back? And they said, like studio, and later on, we talked about infrastructure and discipline and things like that. But at that time, it was studio, and I said, okay, cool. If I get you studio, will you come? And they said, just tell us a place, the time, and we'll be there. So a lot of credit does go to them, for being as receptive, to my suggestions as they were. And yeah, from then we just talked a lot. We talked a lot about the lyrics. A lot of it I didn't agree, but at the same time, as with hip hop, it's being your authentic self. And I could tell them pockets of flows, music stuff, but they had to tell their truths. And I never got in the way of that, because I just wanted them to tell their story. And yeah, and there was a lot of tricky situations, a lot of instances and circumstances, but I think that's part and parcel of certain lifestyles, and what I could do was just try to help them navigate through that, and hopefully come out on the other side with a lot less scars than they potentially could have ended up with.
So true. And good on you for going out there. That would have spoke, that would have been massive for them, that someone was going out to them. So good on you for doing that, and then that they listened as well, because a lot of people aren't teachable, right? Like, or manageable. They say, I hear stories from managers, I know why they're paying me, they're not listening. So
yeah,
big ups to them.
exactly. They they answered when I called. So I think that's I think that's also credit to the people that raised them as well, to have that, because they didn't have to do anything for me. I'm like a guy that's twice their age, but I do feel like, because they knew a bit about my history, and because also I was Tongan, they were kind of like, okay, let's just hear what he has to say. And again, credit to them for taking that leap of faith, because as you said, there's some people that we try to do that and they just not as receptive. They won't turn up, or they'll turn up late, or try almost sabotage themselves to try. It goes back to what I was saying. To try, and then kind of have the tools to deal with it if it doesn't succeed.
So true. And I guess you know, like you were saying, there were issues with the legal stuff, but good on them for taking that and turning it into creativity and then trying to change their circumstances for better, you know, not just them, but their family, their communities. And then we're seeing it, you know, in other parts of Sydney where other artists are trying to do the same and, you know, think about how else they can make this as a career. And it's around the country, and it's great for us to see. You know, I never envisioned that this would be happening. So I know you're chuffed that it is, and so am I. You know, like never in you know, I mean, we know what it was like, you know, and how we were pigeonholed, right, with the Australian music industry. So, you know, it's great to see that it's providing more options for our young people and our communities.
Because we'd always look at New Zealand as kind of leading the way in that regard, you know, because they were really doing it, and then to see us be able to have that moment as well, and to add on that, New Zealand being influenced by us, which I thought I would never ever see. They hated us so much. Besides, you know, they gave us, you know, a pass because we were islanders. Well, I don't know. They didn't really like our music, you know, but they always showed love. But now it's just so interesting to see that, you know, their kids are looking at OneFour and Haus and HP Boys, like, oh yeah, they're the ones, you know.
Yep. We had to muscle our way into the shows and onto their music shows. Now you go to Auckland or New Zealand, the music's pumping everywhere, right? So anything can happen.
It's it.
But that's good advice for, you know, up and coming artists, right? Listen to the advice you get given and be prepared to be managed or to try different things, you know, be open to developing your craft and your musical journey. The other thing I wanted to talk about is, you know, we talked earlier off camera about the pandemic and how that's influenced us all. But then we're starting to come out of it now. And, you know, I was wondering, have you thought about how this is going to impact our artists or the industry? You know, because we know within hip hop, you said before, it's DIY, you know, we do it ourselves. What do you think, you know, how's it going to be for creatives and artists coming out of the pandemic?
Well, it is a very depressing period for our industry, because a lot of ways that we've been making money, you know, in regards to shows and things like that, we couldn't do it anymore. Can't even go to the studio. Can't even shoot a video. You know, so it's you know, I just hope, you know, for an up and coming artist, it's very challenging. You know, and I just hope a lot of those emerging talent have people around them to help them recognize how they could utilize this time. I'm very fortunate that I'm able to do that and be able to share it with my artists that I work with. You know, like, okay, write. You can write. If you stuck writing, the thing about, you know, music is not only about the song. You know, what else goes into the song? Teach yourself how to produce. Teach yourself Photoshop. You can create your own artwork. Think about concepts and ideas for your songs, for your music, for your, you know, EP or your album, your video. You know, stylists. Think about the clothes you're gonna wear, because as you know, it's not just about talent. It's just about having the whole package. So, you know, there's a lot of things that we can do during lockdown. It's just, I think, given the chance to recognize that, because once we start slowly moving out of it and shows start coming, you don't want to feel like you're on the back foot. You know, you want to feel like, okay, I did this and that, you know, and again, you know, and that also leads to that that sense of accomplishment and how good that feels to finish something or to learn something. And once we start coming out, you want to feel like you're a better person or more aware than you were going in. You know, you want to be able to, like, okay, I worked on this song, or I worked on this video or this concept. I learned how to make my own beats. I learned how to use Photoshop. there's, or learn a new language, something. You just want to be able to come out feeling like you made the most of your time at home.
So true.
But in saying that, I do recognize, everyone's circumstances are different. They're not afforded to be able to do that. Like some people don't even have a computer, or some people's home life is very stressful. So that is very difficult to kind of have that balance. But I feel like if you do have that opportunity to be able to learn something new, then definitely take it.
So true. It's good advice, and it's good that you're encouraging the artists to look at it holistically, not just focusing on the lyrics. Like their whole packaging, and so that they're involved at every step. Then they're multi-skilled. For the next phase of their career. If they're not 100%. Always going to be
even like reading up on entertainment law. Because there'll be times where you're approached by people with contracts. I mean, obviously, you're not going to know everything, but I think just having a kind of a certain awareness of what is royalty, what is the standard royalty, what is manager's fee, should standard fee be like, just those little things where especially now when it's all that information is so readily available.
So true. And it's great to see all the free info sessions, that are being provided here in New South Wales. So good opportunity to upskill and increase our knowledge. Hey, initially we were only going to talk like for 15, 20 minutes. I think it's almost an hour. We're just starting. But I think we'll just do one more, like any tips, from what you've learned through the pandemic. So, life tip or a creativity tip, anything you'd like to pass on? Because, I feel like it's been a season for many of us that, we've come out stronger. And you mentioned depression, people are going through stuff. So, but then I also know people finding new ways to manage their mental health, their physical health, emotional health. Do you have any tips for us?
Yeah, I think especially when you have young children, like my children 9 and 6, and homeschooling has been super challenging for my wife, and that's 2 parents. I can't imagine like a single parent trying to homeschool their kids, or even 2 parents that have 4 kids trying to homeschool. It's super tough. So what I've learned is to be easy on yourself. Is we have this expectation of being able to do everything, but we can't. And if we do everything, then it's not done well. Because we're too fixated on like, oh, we got to do everything and everything's gonna be perfect. But we got to realize, like, man, we aren't perfect. We I was talking to someone online about parenthood and homeschooling, and I told him, I said, look, some days you're going to nail it, and some days you're just going to pack it in at 12 o'clock because it's just not working. The kid's not taking it in. You're stressed out, and sometimes you just got to be like, man, I failed this. But then you go like, well, you got to recognize a lot of people are going through that exact same thing. You just got to take care of yourself because, just the mental health of adults and children especially, it's at an all-time high. And I think we need to be easy on ourselves and kind of recognize that we can't be that person we want to be all the time. We got to allow ourselves to make mistakes. We got to allow ourselves to be emotional, be a cry, and then when we do something, when we do something right, to celebrate that little win. Be like, man, yeah, we actually finished all the work today. Scratching your eyes out trying to get this kid to finish work at 7 p.m. Just to be like 3 p.m. Okay, we did our best. Tomorrow is a new day.
So true. Go easy on ourselves. Be kind to yourself. And
Yeah, be kind to yourself. I think, and social media doesn't help, but you got to give that a rest sometimes too. But yeah, look after yourself, because you look after yourself, then you can look after others.
so true. Well, big ups to your partner Shani and the children as well.
Man,
And
she is our rock, man. She yeah, she's a special person. So I'm very thankful, that we have each other.
she is.
She's probably
And
more thankful she has me, but
oh, you think? I'll have to interview her about that one actually. But thank you for sharing all of this with us. I know there's
My
a lot of
pleasure.
gems in there for our young people, but also for our families. And it's inspired me as well. That's what I love about these conversations. We learn so much, and it's there's always new things that we can learn to take on our journey. So thank you so much for sharing, and I look forward to seeing you in person
Yeah,
again when
funky fresh in the flesh. Definitely.
yes
But yeah, thank
indeed.
you. And thank you for having me. And again, thank you for your work. I know you've been putting in the work with the youth for like many, many, many years, and a lot of people speak highly of you and what you do. So thank you, as a community, someone from the community, and as a friend as well.
Thank you so much, and take care of you, and we'll see you again soon.
Will do. Take care.
See
Peace.
you. Peace.